She walked into that part of her life believing she was untouchable. Crowns and smiles convinced everyone she was safe from consequences. What no one saw was the pressure building and the need to always win. Every post looked perfect, but nothing was simple behind the screen. She believed rules bent for people like her, and mistakes could be talked away. Then fear entered the room. Control slipped fast. Quiet choices stacked up, and silence became dangerous. When the truth finally moved, it did not knock. It forced its way in. This was not about a title. It was about the moment belief shattered and the game ended.
The verdict reads as follows as to each count. On count 1, it says, "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." On counts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the verdict reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty."
Trinity Madison Poague was 18 and held the Miss Donalsonville title, a crown that brought trust and attention. She studied at Georgia Southwestern State University and fit easily into campus life. People saw a focused student with a clean image. Online, she showed smiles, sashes, and confidence. Adults saw someone responsible. No one questioned her, but her private world was unstable. Trinity wanted control and a future that belonged only to her. She rejected reminders of lives that came before her. Pressure did not slow her down. It pushed her harder. The title made her feel protected. Attention made her feel justified. She believed problems could be handled quietly, and tension could stay hidden. At 18, she was making serious choices behind closed doors through private talks and messages. By January, the gap between who she appeared to be and who she was becoming had grown too large to hide. Julian Williams entered Trinity's life as a young man already carrying responsibilities. He was a father, and that shaped everything between them. At first, the relationship felt intense and fast. Trinity wanted certainty, commitment, and a future that moved forward without delay. Julian tried to divide his time between romance and fatherhood, but the balance never felt equal to her. The presence of his child created tension from the start. Trinity did not embrace that part of Julian's life. She saw it as a reminder that she was not his first priority. Friends later said her frustration was obvious. She wanted a clean future, one that did not include a role she never asked for. The idea of being a stepmother felt heavy and unwanted. Messages between the two showed growing strain. Conversations turned sharp. Jealousy surfaced often. Trinity spoke about wanting a child of her own and not wanting to share attention or space. As weeks passed, the relationship grew unstable. Arguments became frequent. Small issues turned into major fights. Julian felt pulled in two directions, while Trinity felt blocked from the future she imagined. The day started quietly inside the college dorm. Julian Williams stepped out briefly, expecting to return within minutes. His son had been fine just before he left. When Julian came back, everything was different. The child was unresponsive and not moving normally. Julian panicked and called for help, struggling to explain what he was seeing. What should have been a routine moment turned into an emergency. Emergency responders arrived quickly and took control. The child was rushed from the dorm to an ambulance as sirens echoed across campus. Julian followed, asking questions no one could answer yet. Trinity remained nearby as the scene unfolded. At the hospital, doctors worked urgently, but the child did not improve. Medical staff soon shifted from treatment to examination. News spread across campus while details remained unclear. The situation had moved beyond confusion into something far more serious. Police arrived soon after the emergency call. They asked who was present, what happened before the incident, and how the child had been acting. Julian explained he had been gone briefly. Trinity gave her account without emotion. At first, nothing pointed clearly in one direction. Officers examined the room, noting furniture placement and surroundings. There were no obvious signs of a struggle. Investigators said they needed time. The dorm room was sealed, and the campus grew quiet as students whispered, unsure what to think. Within hours, investigators returned with sharper focus. They rebuilt the timeline, minute by minute. The short window when Julian was gone stood out. officers compared statements and looked for gaps. Small details mattered now. They examined where the child had been placed and how the room was arranged. Medical staff shared early concerns that did not match a sudden medical collapse. Police still made no accusations, but the tone shifted. The case was no longer routine. Photos were taken. Items were logged. Phones and messages were collected. The room carried new weight. Investigators stayed cautious, but concern grew. What was said no longer matched what doctors were seeing. Behind the scenes, medical experts reviewed injuries in detail. Their conclusions would change the direction of everything. Doctors documented severe physical injuries that could not be explained by an accident. The force involved was significant. Medical experts confirmed the injuries happened shortly before the emergency call. Photos and videos showed the child had been fine earlier. Falls from furniture were ruled out. The explanation no longer fit. Investigators now knew the injuries were not accidental. The medical examiner confirmed death caused by severe physical trauma. The injuries were extensive and inconsistent with any accident or medical event. Accidental falls were ruled out completely. The conclusion was clear. The injuries came from intentional force. Records showed Trinity Poague was the last person alone with the child during the critical time. When questioned again, Trinity's explanations shifted. She first claimed the child fell from the bed. Later, she said the child fell from a chair. Each version changed under pressure. None matched the medical evidence. Investigators tested every claim. Each one failed. The stories collapsed as facts stacked against them. Prosecutors began focusing on her mindset and behavior before and after the incident. Police reviewed messages sent earlier that day. Some showed anger and frustration. They did not stand alone, but they added context. Officers spoke with roommates and students nearby. Several reported hearing prolonged crying earlier. Others described tension in the room before the emergency. Each account added weight. Investigators remained methodical. Prosecutors later argued the case was driven by jealousy and resentment. Trinity wanted Julian fully focused on her. She wanted a future shaped only by her choices. The child represented a part of Julian's life she could not control. Prosecutors said she did not see the child as family, but as a problem blocking the life she wanted. What began as uncertainty became a criminal investigation. Police stated publicly the death was no longer considered accidental. The campus reacted with shock. Julian struggled to process the change. Trinity remained mostly silent as questioning intensified. Evidence was tested. Medical reports were finalized. The pressure built steadily. No arrest had been made yet, but the direction was clear. The arrest did not happen with shouting or chaos. It came quietly, days after Romeo was rushed to the hospital and pronounced dead. Investigators had already spoken to everyone involved more than once. They had reviewed timelines, phone data, and early medical findings. When they arrested Trinity Poague, it was clear the case had shifted from doubt to certainty. She was taken to the Sumter County Jail, processed, and placed under strict monitoring. Her pageant title was removed soon after. The campus where the child had died returned to normal classes, but the case followed Trinity into every room she entered. She pleaded not guilty and waited as the legal process moved forward. Months passed before the case reached a courtroom. During that time, Trinity remained under court supervision. Prosecutors worked with medical experts. Defense attorneys searched for gaps. Witnesses were interviewed again. Phone records were examined line by line. Every detail from the day of Romeo's death was rebuilt minute by minute. The trial date was finally set. By then, the case had drawn statewide attention. A former beauty queen now faced life in prison. When the trial began, the courtroom filled fast. Trinity entered with her legal team, showing little emotion. At times, she stared straight ahead. At other moments, she reacted sharply to testimony. The judge explained the charges. The jury listened as the case was laid out. Prosecutors said the child died from violent injuries. The defense said there was doubt. From the first day, it was clear this trial would focus on time, force, and truth. The state began with the timeline. Julian Williams left the dorm room late in the morning to get pizza. Video footage confirmed the exact time he walked out. Romeo was alive and acting normal when Julian left. When Julian returned less than 40 minutes later, his son was unresponsive. Prosecutors repeated this window constantly, emphasizing that everything happened during that short gap. Only one adult was alone with the child, and that fact did not change. The jury was told that within these minutes, Romeo suffered fatal injuries. Prosecutors walked through the first accounts given at the hospital. Trinity told staff the child was eating snacks and suddenly stopped acting right. She admitted lightly shaking him to get a response. A nursing note recorded her saying she squeezed his cheeks and tapped his face. Julian told staff Romeo had fallen shortly before arrival. Doctors documented every word. Investigators would later compare these statements to the severe injuries found in Romeo's body. Emergency room doctor Michael Busman described Romeo arriving without a pulse and not breathing. Imaging revealed a skull fracture and liver laceration almost immediately. He explained that injuries of this size cause symptoms within minutes, not hours. It was highly unlikely the child could have been hurt the night before and act normal the next morning. Swelling, brain bleeding, and collapse appear immediately. He emphasized the damage matched high-force trauma, not a shortfall. CPR could not have caused the liver tear, located away from the compression site. The injuries occurred shortly before the emergency call.
I believe the nurse told me that they have a young child that is not breathing, and they were taking him to the back, which is also one of the two trauma rooms. And I did see a young gentleman carrying a very young kid in his arms and sort of running toward that trauma room, or walking fastly toward that trauma room.
Dr. Jill Olick took over care from Busman. She told jurors Romeo died as a result of massive head trauma. She reinforced that CPR could not have caused the liver injury. The severity fit high-force blunt trauma, not a household accident. Her testimony ruled out accidental injury as a realistic explanation. She confirmed the damage was far beyond what a fall from a bed or chair could cause.
Why did this baby die?
This baby died as a result of massive head trauma.
GBI medical examiner Dr. Anthony Clark testified about the autopsy. He described a complex skull fracture at the base of Romeo's head, bleeding on the brain, and a crushed right lobe of the liver and adrenal gland. Clark explained that these injuries required very high, focused force. The head trauma alone would have killed the child within seconds to minutes. The pattern of injuries was inconsistent with a household fall. Clark concluded the death was a homicide. His testimony reinforced the narrow window in which the injuries occurred, supporting the prosecution's timeline. Roommates testified about Romeo's behavior before the fatal incident. Suitemate Paris Pourmort said she saw Romeo around 10 p.m. Saturday, acting normally with no bruises or marks. Other students recalled hearing the child crying when left with Trinity, sometimes for long periods, which then abruptly stopped. Two former dorm mates testified they heard consistent crying while he was in Trinity's care. Two separate witnesses confirmed no issues when Trinity had babysat children previously. These testimonies framed the child as generally healthy and active before the incident, leaving the jury to question what changed in that brief time alone with Trinity. S.A. Samantha Fort, GBI, testified about text messages from Trinity to Julian and a roommate. They revealed frustration and resentment toward Romeo. In one message, Trinity admitted anger toward the child and joked about wanting to hit him. Weekend messages described irritation at being left alone with him. After Romeo was taken to the hospital, she sent texts claiming she did not harm him. Investigators also found internet searches on her device about brain bleeds and skull fractures. Prosecutors argued the searches showed awareness of serious injury and corroborated the timeline of harm. Investigators testified about internet searches found on Trinity's phone. Searches included questions about brain bleeds and skull fractures. The timing of those searches became a key moment in the trial. Prosecutors said they showed awareness of serious injury. The defense argued curiosity and fear. The jury was left to decide what those searches meant in context. Defense attorney W.T. Tim Gamble III urged jurors to focus on reasonable doubt. He argued no evidence proved a violent, massive force injury occurred in the dorm. He described Trinity as an immature teen in a relationship with a 23-year-old man. He admitted, she made comments about disliking Romeo, but no one witnessed her causing harm. Gamble called Romeo's death tragic but unknown in its exact cause. He suggested injuries could have happened from a fall or during other routine interactions. Lamb delivered rebuttal. He stated that when Trinity's roommate saw Romeo around 10 p.m. on January 13th, he had no visible injuries. Only two possibilities existed: accidental trauma or inflicted trauma. Accidental trauma, he argued, was not realistic given medical testimony. Dr. Olick ruled out a bedfall. Julian's credibility was reinforced. He had no reason to harm his son. Julian Williams testified about the day his son died. He described leaving briefly to get food. He explained returning to find his son unresponsive. He rushed him to the hospital without hesitation. Prosecutors later recalled him to show the jacket he wore that day. A stain remained on the sleeve. He told jurors he never washed it because it was the last thing he had from his son. The courtroom fell silent. The defense urged the jury to focus on reasonable doubt. They argued there was no blood or signs of violence in the dorm room. They said no one saw Trinity hurt the child. They described her as immature and overwhelmed. They said the case was tragic but unclear. Prosecutors responded that internal injuries do not always leave visible signs, and that medical proof mattered more than appearances. The jury deliberated for nearly 3 hours. When they returned, the courtroom held its breath. Trinity watched closely. The verdict was read. She was found guilty of felony murder, aggravated battery, and cruelty to children. She was acquitted only of malice murder. Her face changed as the words landed. Tears followed. Her hands shook. The case moved to sentencing. At sentencing, Trinity stood before the judge. The judge spoke briefly. He said the sentence must match the conduct. He sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, plus 20 additional years to run at the same time. Trinity cried openly as the sentence was read. The courtroom remained quiet. The weight of the decision settled heavily. Trinity broke down in tears as the judge handed down a life sentence and an additional 20 concurrent years, just under an hour after the jury returned its guilty verdict. W. James Sizemore Jr. said, "I don't do a lot of speaking when I am passing the sentence. I have heard the case, and I've considered the tragedy. The bottom line is you're going to receive a sentence of life in prison." Poague, stripped of her titles after her arrest, stared blankly through the proceedings. Julian remained silent. Family members on both sides reacted. Some wept. Others sat motionless. The judge expressed hope the family could find closure. The case ended with finality.
The verdict reads as follows as to each count. On count one, it says, "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." On counts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the verdict reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." Of felony murder, 2 counts, aggravated battery, 2 counts, and cruelty to child in the first degree. Y'all can have a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a tough week for you, I'm sure, and I know that you probably had a lot of places you would have rather been this week than here. I do want to thank you tremendously for your service. You have shown up, you've been on time, and you've paid thorough attention. You've taken in a lot of information this week, and you obviously, from the fact that you've deliberated over this, you've looked at this very closely. So with that, your county appreciates the work you've done, and you'll receive a stipend. It's just a token of the county's appreciation. You are free to leave for the term. You're also free to, you can certainly step back into the courtroom through the other door if you wish to, or hang around if you want to speak with the lawyers, but you don't have to. You don't have to talk to anybody. You're welcome to leave at this time if you prefer. If you do, turn in your badges on your way out, and make sure that your notes are in the jury room. And I really appreciate it. Y'all are free to go.
The tragic death of Romeo Angeles ended with justice through the court's verdict, holding Trinity Poague accountable for her actions. The case left deep scars on the family and community, a stark reminder of how quickly life can change. While the courtroom brought legal closure, the loss remains a lasting sorrow. Thank you for following this story. Share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more true crime updates and in-depth case coverage. Stay tuned for more gripping, real-life stories.